Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Allie and I work at the Fulfillment Fund, and we are excited to welcome Nurit Katz to join us. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer at UCLA. So Nurit is UCLA's first Chief Sustainability Officer, and she is involved in all of the university's sustainability initiatives. And she is also an executive within UCLA's Facilities Management Department. So that means she works across all departments to ensure UCLA is operating as efficiently as possible. And she does this by considering what is known as the triple bottom line. And I'm sure Nurit is going to explain what that is, but that means considering not just the economic factors of how the university runs, but also the environmental and social factors. Nurit received her bachelor's degree from Humboldt State University in environmental education, and she also has a master's in public policy and an MBA from UCLA. So we are so excited to have her here. So Nurit, wanted to just start off by asking you to, I think I gave an okay introduction of your job function, but if there's anything else you want to add and how long you've been at UCLA, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So as Allie noted, I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for UCLA. So that's not a title that a lot of people have heard of. So sustainability, if you're not familiar, it's basically like thinking about how we make society work in such a way that you guys, when you grow up, can still have resources and things to use. So it encompasses a whole wide range of things. It might be topics like renewable energy or, recycling and waste. Like if you've seen stuff about plastics in the ocean or climate change, all of that falls under sustainability, which is focused on how do we solve these big global challenges that we're facing. So you might deal with environmental justice issues or just a whole wide variety of topics. And so that works well for me because I'm sort of more of a generalist. But, as I'll talk about later, you can also be sort of more specialized within the field of sustainability. I've been at UCLA in this role for now almost 12 years. And then I was at UCLA for grad school, as Allie mentioned.
So what made you decide to get into the sustainability field?
So I was actually I cared a lot about these kind of issues even when I was a kid. So I don't know if any of you guys have been involved in like student groups at your high school or earlier, but I remember I helped organize like my 6th grade class to do something around some of the rainforest issues that were happening back then. And so I always kind of cared about these issues. In college, I did environmental education. So I actually used to teach, and I did all kinds of education with kids mostly. So like K through 6. I did some outdoor education where I would take kids hiking and teach them about nature. I did like garden stuff and farm stuff, and I really enjoyed it. But eventually I ended up feeling like as much as I loved teaching, I also felt I could have more of an impact kind of managing a whole program. And so I went back to grad school on the management and policy side, but I was able to find a way to still teach. So we have a sustainability certificate for professionals, and I teach adults now. Although I miss the little kids, they were a lot of fun. I don't know if any of you babysit or work with little kids or have a lot of little siblings, but it can be a blast.
So tell us what your favorite part about your job is.
That is tough. Ultimately, I think I chose this career because I really care about these issues and because I really like being able to have an impact and help kind of solve problems for the world. So that's probably the part I love the most, the fact that I feel like my work is meaningful and that I connect to it. But on the day-to-day, I really love that my work has a lot of variety in it. So sometimes I'm working with students and doing career events like this. Sometimes I might be, doing planning and data analysis. Other times, might be doing like communications and website stuff. It's sort of like being a startup CEO where you're wearing a lot of different hats. And for me, that works well. Not for everyone. Some people really like to have like one project they're working on, but I'm kind of a 10,000 projects juggling sort of person. So I love that about the job.
So we had a number of students express interest in careers in environmental protection. And I know sustainability is kind of part of that. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about how sustainability is similar and or different from, kind of straight up environmental protection or conservation. Because I think a lot of people, when they think about environmental protection, they think about, recycling or saving water or turning off your lights to conserve electricity.
Yeah, so sustainability is sort of an umbrella that includes environmental conservation. So it's kind of looking at that intersection of human and environment. And so some of the solutions in sustainability might be more focused on traditional conservation, and then some might be more technological solutions like the newest kind of solar panels. So it's a very broad field. There are a lot of opportunities within environment and sustainability, and sometimes we talk about them together. So like we have a career page through UCLA Extension that shows like some jobs in the field, and I can put the link in the chat just so you guys get a sense of some of the kinds of jobs that are out there. And we also have a page on our site. I'll put both in the chat. Can everyone see the chat who are attending the webinars? If I put to all panelists and attendees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So here's one career site that has the actual job postings. And then we also have a career site where I give a little talk like this, but there's a lot of links on that page to like a bunch of other job sites. So you can kind of explore what some of the different careers are. So there's tons of different opportunities, working in nonprofit, working in business, lots of different roles. Like of the kind of students who come through our programs, some might be working for a solar company, others might be teaching sustainability. Some of the environmental science students are doing like field biology and like tracking nests and things like that, which I love to do as a hobby. Actually, I'm volunteering for an LA raptor study. So if any of you see hawks in your neighborhood, you should email me. I'll put my email in here. And you're welcome to reach out with like questions and stuff too. But right now it's active nesting season. So I'm looking for hawk tips in Los Angeles. So yeah, there's just a lot of great opportunities across that field.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any practical skills that help you be successful in your role?
Yeah, so in a role like mine, communication is really key. So I do a lot of either formal speaking like this or a lot of kind of facilitating different meetings, bringing together different stakeholders. So communication is really key. Project management is really key. So, being able to kind of track and manage different projects. I would say those are really big skills for this type of job. And having some kind of data skills as well can be useful. But then, in terms of for the field more broadly, not just my type of position, whatever it is you're passionate about, there is a way to tie into sustainability. Let's say you're really into like journalism. There are, journalists who are doing amazing work on, these critical environmental stories. There are screenwriters writing really powerful documentaries and movies about this stuff. So you don't have to be like in engineering or environmental science to have an impact.
That's a good point. What are some challenges that you deal with in your job, and how do you work through those?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So UCLA is like a small city. We have 80,000 people daily. So communication and getting the word out is actually a really big challenge to our work and sustainability. So we're trying to find creative ways to engage people, but it's definitely a constant challenge, as is sort of the juggling aspect, because you're pulled in so many different directions. So I'm trying to learn how to be more strategic and thoughtful with my time, but I'm very much a yes person. So it's very hard not to just want to do everything.
Definitely, especially if it's something you're passionate about and has such a broad impact. If you were talking to someone who's interested in this field, where would you suggest they begin?
Well, I would probably send them the 2 links I put in the chat. So we have a lot of great resources between those 2 pages where you can kind of check out what some of the links are. But the other thing I would say is, and I'll add one more link, I would recommend that they go to events. And right now, as a student in high school, you don't always have like good transportation. But right now, because of COVID, so many events are virtual. And so you can tune in the evenings and like meet all kinds of professionals from the field. So we have a lot of events that we organize at UCLA, and then we also post events on our website from local organizations. So I just posted a link to our event calendar, and I definitely recommend you guys check there as well. And, you know, going to events can be a great way to learn from speakers in the field about what some of the most recent information is, you know, whereas like it's such a rapidly changing field. If you don't go and hear live speakers, you might not get the latest stuff. And then usually a lot of events have like networking opportunities, and people will be really excited to talk to you if you're a student. So you should take advantage of that and definitely try to, you know, get out there and ask questions and listen and all of that.
Thank you. Do other organizations and companies have roles like yours? Because you're focused at UCLA, and you know, if someone were to, you know, live in another part of the country or just, you know, not have an affiliation with UCLA, what does that look like at other companies?
Very similar. So there's a lot of parallels with this kind of work. You know, the kind of work that I do is very similar at a lot of different companies. So my role is a lot like that of a chief sustainability officer for like a big company. The one difference is I get to work with our students and researchers, which someone at a company doesn't always get to. But in terms of like managing our waste and food and transportation and energy and all of those pieces of managing sustainability for an organization, that is very similar regardless of where you would be.
Got it. Since you're UCLA's first chief sustainability officer, how have you seen, since your tenure at UCLA, the emissions or the kind of like the environmental impact of the campus, you know, improve and change? And I'm sure you've discovered things that, you know, weren't visible before as well.
Yeah, we've been able to make a pretty big difference. You know, we have a lot of really ambitious goals around 2025, including we're trying to get to carbon neutrality by 2025. So we've managed to keep our emissions fairly level despite huge growth in the campus. But now we have these big challenges ahead to lower them even more. Transportation wise, you know, pre-pandemic, we average in Los Angeles, people drive alone to work, like 74% of people drive by themselves. And at UCLA, we were able to lower that to like half of our staff and like 25% of our students. So had a lot of great programs encouraging folks to walk and bike and take the bus, et cetera. So that's been really successful. We've made a lot of progress in sustainable food purchasing, all kinds of areas. And our website, which I shared, you can kind of check that out. And if you guys end up having questions after this, I know it's a short session, but feel free to reach out. I put my email in the chat, and I love hearing from you guys. So
thank you. We have one question from the audience. What are some of the college majors of people who work in your field? You mentioned people that weren't necessarily environmental science majors can do sustainability work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my graduate studies were business and policy. So yeah, people can come from a business side. You know, for my type of job specifically, a lot of people might have a degree in planning or policy. But you know, within the field, because there's so many different positions, again, pretty much every major you can think of, I can give you an example of a career option for sustainability. I always ask the undergrads when I talk to them, like, to give me their major examples. And the toughest one I got was art history, but I was still able to, you know, talk about a way that you could learn from the history of art on like the sustainability impacts of the type of materials you use in art and things like that. So there's a way to tie in no matter what you're interested in, for sure.
I have another question that says, what should our goal be right now? And I'm right now means high school. So in terms of high school students, do you have any recommendations on how to kind of start thinking about this even before college?
Yeah, I would just say explore, like I was saying, go to events, watch documentaries and things so that you might get a sense of what type of topics interest you. And don't freak out if you don't know what you want to do for the rest of your life. Like I work with plenty of professionals in our certificate program who are in their 40s or 50s or even 60s, and they're still figuring their career out. Nowadays, occasionally someone really knows from when they're 8 years old that they want to be a doctor and they follow this path and they're a doctor. But most people end up with a lot of different careers and they try out different jobs and they explore different things. So I would just say your goal right now should be learning and exploring and just finding out what's out there and, see what makes you interested. Like, what are the questions that are keeping you up at night? Do you wonder about how do we make smarter cities? Or do you think about electric cars? Or do you think about like, how do we address poverty and, homelessness in Los Angeles? Whatever the questions are that you care about, there's a way to have an impact and try to solve those challenges.
You grew up in LA also, right? And our students here in LA, we're lucky here in LA that we have access to nature, for the most part in our backyard.
Yeah.
And
there's actually there's coming up very soon, there's a program called the City Nature Challenge that you can participate in, and LA will be competing against other cities. And you download this app called iNaturalist. All the instructions are on the website, and I just put it in the chat. But you can go around and like take pictures of bugs and plants and things in your neighborhood and contribute to this big challenge. And real scientists will ID the stuff that you post. Like if you don't know what species it is, it'll get ID'd by people on there. So it's a lot of fun, and it's coming up just in the next few weeks. So there's a lot more nature in Los Angeles than people realize. We have our researchers at UCLA found more than 4,000 species in Los Angeles, including like 52 endangered species. So there's a lot of wildlife right around us, and definitely encourage you to participate in that. But yeah, I grew up right here in LA, LAUSD. I went to Carpenter Avenue, Walter Reed Middle School, and then North Hollywood High School. If there's anyone from any of those schools, howdy. And I see someone had a question about salaries in the field. So those really vary depending on the position. So there's not a simple answer for that, just like in other fields, like some of the nonprofit positions might pay a little less than the corporate positions. So it's going to be everything from like, an internship that's entry level to, a few $100,000 working as like CSO for a big, corporation. Private sector usually pays more. So yeah, it really varies.
So we have about 5 more minutes. And so I just want to put a shout out to students to ask any questions. Anything else? Okay, here's one more question. If someone got confused about their aim in life, like I want to be a pilot or a software engineer, so far for this situation, what can they do?
I think, it's okay. Again, you don't have to know what you want to do now. You will when you get to college. You do need to pick a major, but you can change your mind later on. Like a dear friend of mine thought that he wanted to be an engineer, so he started studying engineering, and then it turned out he really wanted to study brains instead, so he switched to cognitive science. And then when he was out of school, he ended up realizing what he was passionate about all along was cars, and he did market research and works for Toyota now. So your path is not going to be linear necessarily, and that's okay. You just need to make sure that you're continuing to learn and continuing to grow. And so, a pilot is a career that does take a lot of training and hours. So, if you really think you might want to be a pilot, that's something to kind of start, working towards. But it's okay to change your mind. If you get out there and you're like, I took a flying lesson once, and when I did, I realized I don't ever want to fly a plane by myself. It was scary. It's like, I'm very happy to be in a plane with someone else being the pilot. So I didn't study it more, but you'll figure it out as you go along when you try things, whether it really feels good to you and whether you want to keep working towards that challenge.
One more question came through. If I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, is there a possibility I could help the environment with this career?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of engineers working towards environmental problems, and that includes mechanical engineers. I know at UCLA, we have researchers in the mechanical engineering department developing all kinds of cool stuff. We also have an environmental engineering degree. I think it's environmental and civil engineering, but there are people in all different fields of engineering working on different parts of this challenge. You know, there are people in electrical engineering who are developing like new, really crazy micro batteries and things like that. We have a professor in mechanical engineering who does all kinds of smart EV charging stations and really interesting research on campus. That research center, I'll put it in the chat, is the Smart Grid Research Center. So for the engineer, there's a link. You can check out some of the cool research that's happening in that space. And then since there was at least one student interested in the hawks, here's an article about our hawk study that you might enjoy that had one of my hawk photos in it. So that'll give you a sense of the wildlife piece.
Yes, Nurit is an avid nature photographer as well. And there's so many, like you said, Nurit, there's so many different ways, including the arts, to be contributing to this sustainability picture, and everyone can contribute in whatever way and whatever career you're in. We have a couple more minutes. Anyone else? Don't be shy. Someone saw a hawk on their balcony a few years ago. That's so cool.
Awesome. If you can email, any of you who've seen hawks, if you can email me like which street or which like street corner is closest to the location, that helps us track them.
What are some of the first jobs that might help me explore this career path?
That's a great question. So it kind of depends on which area of sustainability you're interested in. But usually the first jobs people are going to get are going to be internships of some kind. So, you know, as a college student or a high school student, you can try to get like a summer internship with an organization that you're interested in, whether that's like a nonprofit in sustainability or an organization like UCLA. Other kind of entry level. So like with my like with sustainability management, it might be like a sustainability analyst position. Other than intern, that might be like where you might enter.
Aside from UCLA, do you know if any other companies have internships?
Yeah, I mean, a lot do. So unfortunately, they can be a little bit hard to find. So that's why I was recommending check out our calendar and go to events and talk to people, because sometimes internships aren't always posted on like the big job sites like LinkedIn and things like that. Sometimes you need to kind of ask around. So it's definitely worth trying to talk to people. Yeah, AQMD definitely has internships. Thank you for sharing that, Andrea. Yeah, a lot of companies and organizations do have internship opportunities. You can also call if there's like a company or a nonprofit that you're interested in working for, even if they don't have anything listed, you can call and say you're looking for an internship. A lot of times they're for college students, but sometimes they'll take high school interns. So again, it's worth kind of calling and asking.
What is the hardest thing about your job?
I think the hardest thing about my job is just the juggling so many different things. It's really a challenge because there's so many interesting problems to solve. I think a colleague of mine once called it insurmountable opportunities. So that can be really challenging. Oh, good point. Yeah, sanitation, someone mentioned, has internships. So the chief sustainability officer at LA City Sanitation is actually a former student of mine from our sustainability certificate program. So that's definitely an option to look at.
Thank you, Nurit, so much. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you everyone so much.